Hey everyone, you are listening to Life in Motion, a podcast where I, Heather George, talk to my best friend, Jamie Jobe, about life, the ups, the downs, and everything in between, including the stuff we're not supposed to talk about. Let's get started. I kind of woke up grumpy today.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
Because it's your birthday and you're getting old?
no, it doesn't really bother me that I'm getting old. It doesn't
Really?
bother me that it's my birthday. I get grumpy thinking about people trying to rearrange their lives to try to celebrate me in some way.
Oh, come
please, totally
on.
not necessary.
Oh, my word.
Just, guys, let's move on. It's a birthday. Say happy birthday and let's just continue on.
That's fascinating to me because I had this issue with all celebrations, I don't know, for a good decade. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a wound from my past that I don't really even remember. But for a decade, at least 10 years, Christmas, my birthday, anything, my anniversary, I would just wake up ticked off and be so mad. People would, oh my goodness, somebody's going to hear this that gave me a gift card. People would give me gift cards. I wouldn't use them. I'll show you. I don't know what my problem was, but God has dealt with me and now I'm just like fully embracing all the celebrations. So I want to know why you can't just embrace people wanting to celebrate you.
I wonder if you're me, and I do the same thing, preemptively setting myself up like I'm not going to be disappointed.
Yes, I do think that's what it is.
Because I know I'm not expecting anything from my kids other than a hug and a happy birthday.
Sure.
And I'm not expecting, I'm setting myself up to not be disappointed because I'm fully prepared for Whit to completely forget that it's my birthday.
Well, just set your mind at ease. He has not forgotten because the two of us have been talking about what in the world do you want this year because you can be a bit difficult to shop for.
I don't need anything.
I know you don't need anything, but people want to celebrate you.
I think that what I want is acts of service.
Sure.
And Whit does not do that. He doesn't
Listen,
serve.
What's crazy about that is neither do I. And I don't want to come do anything for you either.
And it's
I do
fine.
want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate you the way I want to celebrate you.
We'll go out. We'll have fun.
Oh,
It'll be
my
fine.
word. I think it's interesting. There's so many things in life that bring up those same feelings. Like, I don't want to set my expectations too high because I will undoubtedly be disappointed. Or maybe you've been disappointed in the past. I know for me, that's why I don't want to set my expectations too high because I have been disappointed in the past. I don't want to have to relive that. It's kind of similar to what we're getting ready to talk about, which is death of a dream. You know, grief comes in a million different shapes and forms and packages, and it's not always death of a person. It could be death of a marriage. Mm-hmm. It could be death of maybe job loss or a dream that you had and your family dynamics changed and it was never fulfilled. Infertility. I mean, you name it. Being a single parent, you never expected that.
Yeah. I think especially this last year that we have, I wonder how many people are grieving and they don't even know it over loss of a job, loss of a business, loss of
normalcy,
goals that you set. You know, expectations that you had to accomplish some things and whatever it might be, and it's all been put on hold or pushed to the side or dumped in the trash can because of circumstances maybe beyond your control.
We are so fortunate where we live because our community is pretty much opened up, even though we're still in a worldwide pandemic. But we had some snow days recently where kids were home from school, schooling from home, and I could feel feelings of depression trying to jump on me because it just like took me back to the loss of everything we experienced when the pandemic first hit. It's wild that, this feels really bad.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So, Heather, have you ever experienced loss of a dream in your life or loss of just something that would cause you to grieve, whether you grieved at the time or you grieved later?
When I think back on my life as a whole, there's a portion of my life, and we call it between Whit and I and friends. It's kind of this feather boa that I lost. And so when I was young and footloose and fancy free.
Oh my goodness. You sound so old just saying that. But go ahead.
I know.
Okay. All right.
It's my birthday. I realize how old I am, and it's fine. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I still feel, in some ways, I still feel that young, like I should still be that same person. But so decades ago, I just kind of did whatever I wanted to do and wore whatever I wanted to wear and didn't really care what people think about me. And there's this very distinct moment that fundamentally changed a lot for me that I didn't even realize at the time or in the years following. It took a long time to recognize what had happened. And Whit and I were dating. I was a college student, and I had a feather boa in my room and a tiara the tiara might have been from homecoming, but...
Because you were homecoming queen?
I was.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've always dreamt of being homecoming queen. I was not.
I'm sorry.
Which is really a shame. I'm real cute.
It's a great honor to be homecoming queen that, just basking in that glory.
Goodness. Okay, so you had a homecoming queen tiara, which is fantastic.
And I had a feather boa, and Whit and I are going out on a date, and as I got dressed, I was just like, I'm just going to wear this and wrap the boa around my neck and put on the tiara and walk downstairs to meet him. And Whit is a very introverted, don't draw attention to yourself kind of person. Right. And he was deep in the throes of don't draw attention to yourself or be a person around me that draws attention to yourself. And he told me he wasn't going to go out with me if I wore that feather boa.
Wow.
And I think I took it off. I think I was like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. Because it was just for fun. Like it wasn't insulting to me. And I didn't realize the significance of that marker in our relationship. So we ended up getting married. And I dropped out of school, not necessarily intentionally. I thought I would go back. There was some coursework that I was going to have to, one class I had failed, I was going to have to redo.
I love you so much.
And it was just really complicated, and I just didn't want to mess with it. So I took a semester off and then never
I hear some of your children coming out of your mouth right now.
Oh, yeah.
This is just complicated.
It was a lot. It was a hassle. It was a hassle. Didn't want to do it. And also, I was embarrassed that I had failed that class. And I don't know. There's a whole lot going on in this deep feelings. There's regret and shame. And even in the midst of being a newlywed and figuring all that out. And Whit and I had a very tumultuous relationship where one minute we would be like, nobody could ever have been as in love as we are. And then the next half hour, it's, I hate you.
Oh, wow.
And I've made the biggest mistake of my life. So I got married, had kids, did not finish my college career, did not pursue the career that I had set out for. I set everything aside unintentionally for marriage. And
so it wasn't like he asked you to set those things aside?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. But I had marking that feather boa moment set me on a course that I set myself aside. And anybody that's ever had kids struggles with, especially women, laying down things when you realize the responsibility that you have with children of laying down hobbies, laying down careers, laying down
your
ambition,
body.
Laying down your body.
I mean, how'd you ever find out that was a marker in your life?
I think that was probably about 18 years into our marriage, I did a life plan. And what
does that mean?
Life plan is this 1 to 2 day intensive event where you go back and you look at the course of your life, your parents and where you came from and family dynamics that And then you examine who you are and your giftings, your talents, personality.
Oh, and your heart. What makes your heart race.
What makes your heart race, all of that, to try to figure out how to best steward your life for me, it's for the kingdom, but, that might just be for career or whatever. Are you on the right career path? Anyway, at this life plan, we're going through it all, and the life, as you kind of map out on the wall on this gigantic piece of paper, all of your life from childhood through adulthood and where you are today.
And typically there's 3, 4, 5 major markers that are turning points in your life.
Yes. So my major turning points are the death of my mother. I think marriage was one of them. Mm-hmm. The birth of one of my kids was a marker because there was significant change in our life at that point. But as we're doing the life plan, Laura, who was walking me through this, she says, "What do you see here?" And I'm like, "I don't know, not much." A whole lot of.
We are so wildly different because when I deal with things like this, I've also had a life plan. I err on the side of pride, like the kind of pride that I'm like, I see amazing things. I see potential. I see that I'm a world changer. Anyway, you're like, I don't see much.
Yeah, it's a lot of disappointment and just like, I don't see much there. And she's just like, look at this space. And she kind of circles and says, what happened here? Because it's a big blank space.
Oh, wow.
Gosh. And I look at that and it was me losing myself and who I am. We call that the feather boa because I had lost that personality and just had yielded my whole life to marriage and kids and trying to live by what I perceived others' expectations were of me instead of who I was. I was trying to conform myself to what I thought was expected of me. Nobody had ever said, this is the way you should behave and do and live your life. But
how many of us do that, though?
Yeah.
It's like, I see that in a lot of my friends and myself parenting our kids. Like if your kid acts out, you feel like, oh my goodness, that's a reflection
on me.
Yeah, on me. When in reality, they have their own personality and their own giftings and their own life. And certainly I need to help direct them, but I mean, sometimes my kids flat out embarrass me.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes me feel insignificant.
Yes. So, and then if they are doing well, you take on.
Yeah. Oh, man. Did you see that kid? That one's mine.
Yeah, I did that. I hit that home run.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I had realized in that life plan in that moment how much of my life had been set aside for others instead of being true to who God had created me to be and called me to be. And there was a time there was regret, guilt that I had not guilt that I had wasted my life.
Ouch.
Trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be. And so now we call it, you need to put on your feather boa because it's
be your whole self.
Be my whole self, my authentic self in front of anyone and everyone. And because living with Whit, if you know him, is a very strong personality. And just kind of living in his shadow or conforming to what I thought I was supposed to be as a wife and mother, you're not even getting the full perspective of who Whit is if I'm not being my full and true self.
He's of course not here with us right now. And so I hope he's listening because I'm going to speak for him.
I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he's thrilled that I'm going to speak for him. Am I correct, though? He didn't know what a defining moment that was in your life.
Oh, he had no idea. He was just, he was being himself.
Oh, sure.
And so
what's crazy is I would guess, I don't think I'm guessing. I think I know this. Part of what attracted him to you was your carefree personality, your sense of adventure, the things that make you truly you. But then something that made him truly him squashed a bit of that unintentionally.
So we now call it me being my true and full authentic self. It's putting on my feather boa, which is part of this podcast of being able to share my life, share life with you and everyone else.
Can we just say for a second, doing a podcast is really weird because we record in this room, the two of us, and I'll tell you anything.
Oh, yeah.
And then somebody outside of this room says something about me and I'm like, oh, you know that too? I'm like, oh, yeah, you actually know the true, authentic us. Like, whoops. Of course, it's intentional, but wow. I would say loss of a dream in my life was probably career oriented. I did not come into a relationship with the Lord until I was a senior in college. And so I already had my life mapped out, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do professionally. I'm pretty headstrong. And typically, if I set my mind to something, I can achieve it. And my degree is public relations and marketing, and I wanted to go and do media relations for a professional sports team. And
Which team? Any team, or did you have one?
Any team, because it's hard to break into that field. So you cannot say who your favorite team is before you get a good job.
Yeah.
And then they can become your favorite team. But I had applied for an internship with the Dallas Cowboys. I was in college in Texas, and that's what I was going to do when I graduated. And then the whole trajectory of my life changed as I came into a relationship with the Lord. And I had worked for our football team at our university and our basketball team through media relations. But really, my personal relationship with the athletes was more of like, I work the games while you're playing the games, and then we all party together. So when I really decided I was going to live a life devoted to the Lord, I thought, I don't know that I can pursue this dream of mine and not sin. I just didn't think I had it in me, which that was probably a good call. So instead, for a season, I went and lived with my sister and brother-in-law and just really sought the Lord, like, what's next for me? I ended up doing an internship at a church, actually Church on the Move, where I now work. And that was just a whole different type of job. There's not really a lot of partying involved. And
none at all.
Really?
Maybe some late nights at Cracker Barrel or something like that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so my daughter's 7, and we were eating at Cracker Barrel one time recently, and she said, if I could have a food be my boyfriend, I would choose Cracker Barrel hash brown casserole.
I am full agreement. I would cuddle up with hash brown casserole.
So, yeah, a wildly different life I'm living now.
Yeah.
Maybe the one that I had dreamt of. I had dreamt of fame and knowing famous people and making a lot of money and driving a nice car and all very, very worldly desires that I had. So even after I set that down and began working at a church, when things got hard in ministry, I would desire to go back to that. Mm-hmm. And so there was a season of life where I was still looking for jobs in sports media because life wasn't what I had thought it would be. Then when Brian and I had kids, I felt a strong conviction to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, but then that means setting every professional aspiration down. And I have nothing against working women. I didn't feel like it was right for me.
Well, and even I'm a woman of leisure. So
What do you mean by that? Because that sounds like it could be really scandalous.
Well, I enjoy being a stay-at-home mom because I get to
Okay.
do what I want to do, and I don't have to clock in and out and worry about other people. I can, as a stay-at-home mom, even though I am working for the people at home, I can orient my work around myself and make my life happen the way I want it to happen.
Oh my goodness.
So, but I do know that there's a lot of women that are very career oriented, and then they lay down that life and stay at home, and it is a struggle.
Or they're a single mom and they have to do both, and it's
Yeah.
a struggle.
I can't even imagine.
Or they're divorced and
Yeah.
they have to shift kids from one household to another, and it's and this was not what they signed up for. When I was staying home, we've already covered the fact that I'm prideful. I remember.
Let's go over it again.
Well, I'm about to, so you'll like this. There were times that I think the loss of my dream saved my marriage.
Oh yeah,
And
because you told me this.
there was a couple of times that I was just going to leave Brian because he's a pain in the butt. He actually still is a pain in the butt, and so am I. But I may have let him know this, that like, even though we share all of our finances, I'm very well aware that he's the breadwinner, that he pays the bills and everything else. There was a couple of times that I think I would have left, but I would think like, oh, I'm going to have to get a job. Like, I just want to leave him, not like this lifestyle where I'm a woman of leisure or whatever. So we got in a really big argument at one point, and I remember just saying like, I'm out of here. And he said, fine, but set your keys down because I bought that car. And I
Brian.
was so mad at him. So I just marched. This might not be the story you were thinking, but I just marched into the office in our house and I just sat there with my arms crossed and just sat there and thought about if it was worth it to walk away or not. Like literally walk away. I decided as a woman of leisure, I was out of shape and that'd be really hard. So I didn't go. Now I'm completely making light of this because my story is funny, but you do die to different dreams, and some people way more significant than us.
Oh, yeah.
A divorce that they never
saw coming. Infertility. I mean,
I have a friend whose husband passed away from ALS. She didn't expect to be
Yeah.
raising kids by herself as a widow.
yeah.
I mean, there are situations, loss of dreams that are so enormous. And I would say you have to grieve those losses just like you would grieve a loss of a person. The loss of a dream can totally hijack your life.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth talking about. So what would you say to someone who's facing the loss of a dream that's way bigger than ours? Ooh, I threw you for a loop. Good.
You did.
Good. I think no matter what the loss is, the answer's typically the same. Until Jesus is bigger to you than anything else in your life, you're probably not going to get over it.
And I don't want to minimize loss that people are experiencing
Absolutely
by
not.
any means. But when you said, and you're struggling in your marriage or being a stay-at-home mom, and you start thinking about, I'm going to go back and get that career.
Oh, yeah.
That we often fantasize about the dream or what we've lost. Because you could be in a marriage that's difficult. You're in the middle of an argument. So, for instance, Whit and I, we argue almost every day. And some people are shocked that I would say that. But we both have strong opinions, and we're both going to fight for what we want.
Brian and I argue almost every conversation. So go ahead.
And there's been times where, so the boyfriend that I had before I married
Oh, this
Whit,
is going to get good.
we were long-term, pretty serious. Marriage was discussed, and we hardly ever argued.
Oh, wow.
So when Whit and I will be in this season of arguing, and I'm not happy with anything that he's doing, I could let myself I don't, but I could let myself go back and think about that boyfriend and like, man, my life would be so good and so easy if I had made a different decision. And I think that a lot of times with the death of a dream or in the hardship of grieving and rebuilding, that we often fantasize about what we didn't have or what we lost, that's where the prize is in what I don't have.
That is so good. If only I wasn't 40 and still single.
Yeah.
If only I hadn't struggled with infertility and I had a house full of children. If only my spouse wouldn't have died. If only I would have taken that job. Then when he left me, I wouldn't be where I was. If only. Wow.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of times in our grieving, which this is totally normal in the stages of grief, the normal stages of grieving are guilt and anger and regret. There's denial that you recognize that you did have something in your life that you were walking towards, and to not have grabbed hold of it yet, or it's completely gone, that there are normal feelings to walk through, to recognize. But I think that we, in our grieving, have to recognize that this isn't the end.
Yeah.
We still are going to go through and get to the other side, and we don't even know what that looks like yet.
This is the deal, too. I think sometimes, even like in the case with your feather boa, I think sometimes we don't deal with it, maybe because we don't realize how significant it is, but unresolved grief will eventually erupt.
It will.
That is just how life works. So you have to acknowledge the pain. You have to look at it and learn from it and process it, or you'll remain stuck and probably be a very bitter person.
Yeah. Oh, there's a very popular saying.
Oh, good. Lay it on me.
Something along the lines of.
I knew it. A very popular saying that I'm not quite going to be able to quote, but.
Everything happens for a reason.
What do you think about that saying?
I don't think that that's true. I don't think that everything happens for a reason to teach us a lesson or get us to a better place. Or I think there's a lot of things that just happen. And I talked about this in my personal grief of losing my mother, is kind of with the mindset of everything is happening for a reason. God's going to use this for good. Right. Instead of letting myself feel the sadness and the anger and the guilt, I'm okay. So I'm not married yet. What's the lesson here? How can I change myself? How can I set myself up to now finally find a husband this year, because it didn't happen last year? And we're like, okay, what's the reason behind this? Sometimes there's not a reason, and we're just experiencing loss because we're human.
So what is the piece of advice that we might offer our friends as they're considering? Because all we did was bring the conversation into the light, but as they're considering, maybe I really need to look at something in my life and process the grief from it, that it's okay to have the feelings surrounding this, whatever this is.
Don't do life alone, because you can't just... I don't feel like you can just say, oh, I am grieving that I have been working and striving to get pregnant for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's never happened. And just say, okay, I'm grieving, moving on. Right. That's not going to happen. You have to have people in your life to help carry you through. And sometimes it might be a professional, sometimes it's your friends, your small group, but it is walking out and acknowledging. And sometimes when you have been grieving something for a long time, it doesn't just happen overnight in one conversation. Acknowledging, oh, okay, I am angry because.
Yeah.
And then moving on.
Yeah, it's hard to move on by yourself. It really is.
Yeah.
But you can get through it. You can process it. You can end up better for it. Man, I know that's hard to hear. I know that's hard to hear. You can make it to the other side better than you are now if you'll do the hard work. I know that's hard to hear. If you're a single parent or you're a divorcee or you're a widow, but God is so good and he is so big that the hope on the other side of this is well worth the pain of walking through. So I would encourage you with that.
And I would encourage anybody that has a friend come to them and say, in whatever words they use, that I'm experiencing loss or I'm experiencing disappointment, to not brush that aside, because your loss is personal and real to you.
No matter how big or small.
No, I mean, even when you're talking to your children or, teenagers, and, I'm so many years from being a teenager, and my teenagers are experiencing loss of some things. I mean, we've seen it in 2020. They're experiencing loss of prom or a graduation ceremony, which 20 years down the road, you're like, it's just prom. It's no big deal.
Can we just say, Oklahoma, get your act together? Because it's so hard to get a kid a flippin' driver's license.
Oh, yeah.
So experiencing the disappointment that I turned 16 and I've even passed my test, but then I have to go to another appointment to go.
Yeah.
These things are really bigger than you know if it's affecting your heart. They just are.
And if you're grieving losses, small or big, even those small losses, if you just brush them aside and don't acknowledge, that was disappointing to me that I didn't get to go to prom, or it was disappointing. I had a dream of buying a home and I have not been able to make that happen yet, or whatever it is. I mean, there's some things that others might say are small, but I would say there's no small thing in the eyes of the Lord and in your own heart, that something that God has put there that's been disappointed. I would encourage you that acknowledge those things. Bring them before the Lord. Bring them to other people and just say, was important to me and I am disappointed.
That reminds me a little bit, Heather, of our grief part 1, when I think my biggest learning from losing my daughter, Audrey, was the fact that I could be completely honest before the Lord.
Yeah.
And whether big or small, my relationship with him is wildly different because I will now take even the seemingly smallest and most insignificant things and take them to him. And he has been so trustworthy. So as we begin to wrap up, I read this book. I don't know how to say this person's name. How do you say it? Sky Jathani?
I think so.
We'll drop it in the show notes. It's a book called With, Reimagining the Way You Relate to God. And if you've had some kind of disappointment in your life, I found this book wildly helpful in learning how I relate to God and maybe how he really wants me to relate to him and wants me to bring these disappointments and to see him from a different light. I highly, highly recommend that book. So we'll drop the details of that book in the show notes. Do you have anything else to add, or do you want to talk about what you're going to do to bring yourself and those around you joy?
I am going to celebrate my birthday.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Because what I was going to do to bring myself and people around me joy was celebrate your birthday whether you wanted to or not.
I'm happy to celebrate, I guess. I struggle with feeling like I'm a hassle, which is not the way that I feel about people when I'm celebrating them. I want to do something for them, but then I feel like, well, it's a big hassle. We don't need to do that.
Oh my goodness. Heather, we go out to lunch once a week, all 4 of us. We sometimes also go out to dinner on top of that lunch. We sometimes also have a game night on top of that, all in 1 week. So I feel like you thinking that it could potentially be a hassle is really the craziest thing I've ever, we desire to honor you and spend time with you. Oh. So what we're going to do to bring ourselves joy and you is celebrate you and honor you and have so much fun and probably chocolate cake.
Love it.
Okay.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, everybody, what we would love for you to do to celebrate and honor us is leave us a voicemail with your most pressing questions, because at the end of season 1, we're going to have one more Q&A episode, and you can leave us a voicemail at 539-215-9432. Listen, ask us anything. You can ask Heather what she got for her birthday. You can ask us a theological question, which we may not know how to answer. You can ask us.
We'll pause to get some help on that.
Ask us anything you want. Nothing's off limits. Our commitment to you is to bring it into the light and just start a conversation about it. So please do leave us a voicemail, and we will see you next time. If you have enjoyed our podcast today, you should subscribe to Life in Motion. You can find us anywhere you download podcasts. You can also get more information at churchonthemove.com/inmotion. We hope you do something this week that brings you and the people around you joy. See you next time.